Ladies and gentlemen, the tiny Devops guy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tiny DevOps. I'm your host, Jonathan Hall. On this show, we like to talk about dev and ops and related topics for small teams. Today, I'm excited to have guest Steve Wells, who does Agile games and simulations. He has a website about this, and we're going to talk about the value and of some of these games. Steve, welcome on the show. Thanks for coming. Before we dive into games, would you talk a little bit about your career, maybe what you've done, what led you to doing games, and how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. I started off as a dev many years ago. Kind of probably started right at the back end and moved my way through the front end, and kind of fell out the front and became a Scrum Master, and then got into Agile coaching at companies like Sky. Marks and Spencer's, GiftGaff, Clearbank, these kind of companies, and I kind of got to the stage where I was kind of felt I was doing the same kind of thing over and over. So I was enjoying it. It was the coaching, but I thought I was able to lucky position. I was able to kind of semi-retire at the end of kind of 2019, and decided to look for something different. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. I thought, well, what would be useful is that as Agile coaches, we do all these round the table games and things. They're really exciting, and they're a really good way to show complex concepts in a very simple kind of way. So I started to wonder if we could do this online, and built a few things, a few simulations. And that's where it all came from, really. And I started collaborating with a few people on some interesting games, and that's where we are now.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, well, anybody who's worked with a Scrum Master has certainly seen, if not a true game, at least some sort of like retrospective-ish game, right? You know, there's all those different things there. And of course, there are tools like I think Miro is a popular one that provides you that level of sort of frameworks for those things. But it's not really a game, like you said, right? It's not there's not a winner or loser or full simulation. It's more of a framework around something. So you've taken this concept a little bit farther. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think what we're noticing when we allude to things like Miro, and particularly the game, sort of the flagship game, I suppose, our No Estimates game that I developed with Matt Phillip. What we realised when you try to do that on Miro is it ends up as it's not quite there, it doesn't quite work. And what we discovered was that actually, if you play the game on your own browser, then it's much more engaging. So rather than sharing a screen or a Miro board or something. And obviously with a game, there's much more complexity than you can program into a Miro board. You can have stuff where you can move things around on a Miro board. But obviously with a more complex game where you need dice rolls, or you need things to happen automatically, or you need to stop people being able to move certain things unless they've completed certain tasks and so on. It becomes much more engaging than that you're playing on your own browser. So you play in a breakout room in Zoom or something, but on your own browser. And we found we found the engagement is pretty much like the real thing, and we're quite pleased with that. So.
What is your website? I mean, we'll talk about it at the end also. But what is your website where you have these games hosted?
Yeah, it's called Agilesimulationscom. And that's for historical reasons, because I initially started out trying to build a simulation that showed that the knowledge sharing you get from pairing would mean that ultimately you would develop things faster.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I got the maths right on that. It didn't quite really work. So I'm still building that. But what that did give, that gave me the platform to build the rest of the games on. So we did a simulation from there on. How was the best way to deal with dependencies. So, and it turns out if you always do the other team's work before your own, that's the most effective way of getting work to the system, which is controversial. But
I recently watched your talk about that on Vimeo. So we'll talk about that in more detail in just a moment. But was that the first game then that landed on this platform?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. And then after that, we did the coin game, which is one of my favourite games. And to be honest, I think that's some of these games. I think are a lot better the online version than the real face-to-face version. But the coin game, I still think is much better live. It's very visceral and noisy and
Yeah.
competitive. But it works online and it's good. And it's in a situation where obviously in the UK now we've gone back to working from home again as of next week. So it's allows us to play these games. But I think it's that one particularly is probably better played face to face. But it's still my favourite little agile game.
So, how many games are on the platform as of today?
About 8 or 9, I suppose, something like that. And I've also recently just also extended the platform to build an assessment platform, so to do things like Spotify Health Check or Scrum Master assessments or Agile maturity, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's now kind of a generic assessment platform as well, where you can basically chuck in your own questions and all the data scrunging is done for you.
So let's talk about that game you just mentioned. I don't remember the name of it, but the one that described that makes the point that doing other people's work first is the best way to go. What do you call this game or the simulation?
It's actually a simulation. It's called Interdependent Teams, I think.
And describe it for our listeners. What is this? What does the simulation do? How is it set up?
Yeah, well, so what it does, the idea is that you have a set of teams, and they each have to do their own work. They've got their own backlog, but as part of their backlog, they also have tasks from other teams which they have to do, and they have to decide when to do the team. So obviously, when to do the work. So obviously, at some point, they're going to get blocked because another team hasn't done the work that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is what happens when you get blocked. And there are 3 rounds to this simulation. The first round is basically you carry on doing your own work regardless until everybody gets blocked. And then obviously that means there's a big powwow between the POs and the management and so on, and they decide who should do the work next. So, and the second round is basically you do your own work until you get blocked, and then you do the other team's work. And I think in reality, most companies would somewhere between those two, because often, usually, but you never run out of things from the backlog to do.
Right.
There's always something else. So you never get to the stage where you've got nothing to do and you can unblock another team. So most teams are somewhere between those two. And if you run the simulation, it's basically based on a pack of cards. Each team is a suite in the pack of cards. And if you run the simulation, doing the second strategy, where as soon as you're blocked, you do work on the other team's work, is actually slightly better than not. But the third round is you always do the team, and if you've got any work from other teams, you always do that work before your own. And this is up to 3 times faster in the simulation, which is quite amazing. And it makes sense if you realise, because nobody then ever gets blocked, because as soon as some work comes in from another team, you just do it, so that you unblock that team, and they're doing the same for you. So there's much less blocking. And also, it's kind of what comes around goes around. They do work for us, we do work for them. It's a nice way to operate. And also, there's no kind of negotiation, because I think the real problem with dependencies is that if you've got some work that you need me to do, and I've got some work, my own work, we've got no idea how we can relatively prioritise those 2 pieces of work, because I'm an expert in my work and you're an expert in your work. So I don't know if your work's more important than mine, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. So if we just always do the other team's work first, then it might be less important. Who knows? But in the long run, it all evens out, and you end up, and it ends up quite nice and collaborative, and you can't kind of fob people off, because the other thing I've noticed, particularly lots of teams I've worked in the past, it's we've got to do some work for another team, and they go, okay, actually, we haven't got enough information. Can you go and find some more information? We'll look at it next week. So you fob them off, which you can't do if you've got to do the work first.
Right.
So another benefit of it.
So basically, by stepping away from the simulation and into real life again, if you're on a team and you have some other team, you're in a company with 3 or 4 or 10 teams, and there's some interdependencies, do the other team's work first, and it will make your own work faster, not just the other team's work faster. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it makes everybody faster. Yeah. In the simulation, it's 3 times faster, but it's slightly contrived. But I think you're still going to get near that benefit in real life.
Uh-huh. I've certainly seen that benefit within a single team when you have developers who are waiting on code review, for example. If you have a
Yeah.
backlog of pull requests that haven't been reviewed yet,
Yeah.
and when I've switched the priority of the teams I'm coaching and say your first priority is to, before you do anything else, always review any unreviewed code.
Yeah.
And that just speeds everybody up. Of course,
Yeah.
it only works if everybody does it, though, right? If you only have one person doing that and everyone else is, as you say, fobbing off, then you have one person who's only reviewing code and everybody else is off writing code.
Yeah.
So it does have to be a team effort.
It does, and it's kind of the same with the team as well. Because sometimes you might have one team who have all the dependencies,
right?
So they spend that whole time doing other teams' work. So, it can really only works if there's a roughly the same amount of dependencies between teams.
What other games or simulations? I know you have the no estimates game. Maybe we can talk about that one for a minute. What's the premise there? Yeah,
this is a great game. I actually played this first at a conference, Agile Cambridge conference, in about 2017, I think. With the inventor of the game, who's called Matt Phillip from St. Louis. He's working for Pfizer now, I think. And it's a great game. It's just a Kanban board game, and basically you play as a team, and you get perfect information about your backlog, which you wouldn't get in real life. But this is quite interesting. So you basically know exactly how many work items there are.
Okay.
You know exactly how much effort is required for each work item, and you know exactly how much effort you have per day in the team to do it. So you simply have to estimate how long it takes you to get these 25 cards across the board to done. And there you go. And everybody gets it wrong. So always. We played it. We're like, we're pretty good. A couple of project managers, agile coaches. We know our stuff. We're miles out, absolutely miles out. And it's really just demonstrating. It's two things. The first thing it demonstrates is the futility of estimating. It's always going to be wrong because cards are dependent on each other, dependent on the teams. Things get blocked. All kinds of reasons. It's futile to try and estimate. Really. But then what we do in the game is we take the results that we've got, we run Monte Carlo simulations on it to show that you can actually do something a bit more scientific and better than estimating. You can do forecasting based on the previous data that you have.
Okay.
It's more scientific, and it also allows you to have a much better conversation with your stakeholders, your product owners, because you can say, well, instead of just giving you a date that is almost certainly going to be wrong, we're going to say, well, there's a 50% chance we'll finish it by this date. There's a 90% chance to finish by this date and a 99% chance to finish it by this date. And that's a much richer conversation, because if it's like, well, it's just something we want to get as quick as possible to test the market, then 50% is probably okay. But if it's legislative or something, or it has to be there, then we want to say, well, we can do it up by the 99% kind of chance. That kind of thing. So it shows those two things, and once as I already had the platform, I thought, well, actually, I'll contact Matt. So this would be a great game to play to build online, and we did, and it's fantastic, and we believe it's better than the face-to-face game, because there are things like in the face-to-face game you have to roll a dice to see if things are blocked, this kind of thing. You can do that all automatically in code, and you can stop people moving cards when they're not finished, or cheat. You stop people cheating. But also the really good thing is you get to the end of the game and you go, look, here's your cycle time, here's your flow efficiency that you've just done in this game, rather than kind of a stock kind of image, because we generate that data on the fly as the game's going through.
Yeah.
So it's very, very powerful. It's like you can't argue with this data. You've just done this, and these are the results that you have just done as a team. And it's really, really, really powerful, and people get very engaged. But they're always surprised by it, and it's you can show the differences between the teams and what the different strategies they use to get to do the work. So it's hugely engaging.
I find it's often difficult to explain something I have learned through experience. It's really hard to convince somebody. Maybe I can articulate it. Maybe I'm talking about WIP limits or something like that, and the effect that it might have on your flow. And I have seen it work enough times. I've read the goal. I've read the Phoenix Project. I understand how this stuff works. But explaining it to somebody, it's almost as difficult. It's you almost have to say you need to go read these books now, and have my last 10 years of experience before you understand it. But these games can kind of short circuit that, can't they? And provide a way to turn like in this example of the no estimates game, you turn what is essentially, I don't know, 20 weeks worth of work into a 20-minute game, and you can see how that works much faster than living it out and experiencing it yourself.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it allows you to kind of distill the concept into a game and say, this is the one thing I'm going to demonstrate, and just do it very well with the game. I think that's, yeah, gets rid of all the messiness of the real life and what's going on. Yeah, and literally, so we're just going to construct this one concept in this game, and it just shows you. Absolutely, yes, great way to learn that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing in the coin game is also that's another thing. It's because a lot of people play the coin game or the penny game, what they want to call it, and to demonstrate the small batch sizes means you get things through quicker.
Mm-hmm.
But this version takes it another step further. So you play with a set of coins. There's £20 worth of coins of various denominations, and the first round you do like a waterfall approach, and then the second round you do coins one at a time. But the third round, what happens in the first round, we give them 2 minutes. They don't deliver anything usually. The second round, they deliver the £20 in about 1 minute 45 seconds, something like that. And they go, this is pretty good. Yeah. But then the third round, we give them 10 seconds to deliver as much value as they can. And of course, by delivering the highest value items first, they tend to deliver about 80 or 90% of the project value in 10 seconds. And that's a real kind of eye opener. And it's every time one shows people, it's like, wow, the penny drops, and they just, wow, that is amazing. It's a no-brainer.
So you're demonstrating the Pareto Principle with coins in 10 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah. And the great thing about it is because it's actually coins, it's very easy to say, look, you're actually delivering value. You say you've delivered £18 of value. It really rams home that value is what we should be delivering.
What other games do you have on the platform right now?
The other games, we've got a few that I've just kind of knocked off people. So we've got the survival game. You're cast adrift in a in a boat and that sort of thing. But again, all of these things, they're kind of old style games. But because they're online, you play it on your browser. They're a bit more engaging than than normal. We also do. I forgot the name of the guy who invented it. He'll kill me for that, but it's on the website, and that's Agile battleships, and that's a great way to show the importance of feedback loops in Agile, and whether.
Explain that one. I haven't played that. Explain how that one works.
Yeah, it's just very simple. It's normal Agile battleships. You have a set of ships, and the other person has to on a grid, and the other person has to try and hit without seeing where they are, and you tell them if they hit or not. Yeah, the traditional battleships game, but one person gets the feedback of whether they've hit the ship or not after every move, and the other one gets feedback at the end. So,
okay.
So it's fairly obvious who's going to win every time.
I see.
But it's a very simple and quick game, but it's obviously everybody knows battleships, so just got a little twist on it to show the importance of feedback.
Are there any games that you're working on right now that aren't ready yet?
Well, the Interdependent Teams one, we're trying to turn that into a game rather than just a simulation.
Okay.
So that's very early stages. The other game working on it is the pipeline game, which is a terrible name, but marketing not my strong point. But the idea here is you have a set of things you have to deliver, and some of these things have got bugs in them, and you have to make a decision whether to fix the bugs or not. And the idea is to explore, because if you do fix those bugs, sometimes the customer doesn't see them.
Oh, yeah.
So they're overwritten by other things you deliver and that kind of thing. So you might waste time like triaging bugs and fixing them and put the effort in and not delivering other things to deliver bugs that the customer doesn't see or doesn't care about. So everything has like a customer satisfaction kind of value added to it, and a negative one for bugs and so on. But as you go on, you realise that when you're delivering this stuff, the things you're delivering are making up a pattern. So then you go, I see. So now I know which things I need to deliver. So the idea is that you're by delivering stuff, you're working out what it is the customer actually wants.
Okay.
As it all kind of comes together, and it just allows you to kind of explore, the difference. Obviously, you don't want to just deliver all the bugs willy-nilly, because that's really bad. But also, do you really want to waste time, fixing some minor bugs or some bugs the customer might not see, and which is more important to the customer? Ultimately, their satisfaction is giving them what they want, or giving them 100% quality stuff with no bugs. So it's exploring that kind of spectrum. Obviously, there's no kind of right or wrong answer to that, really. I mean, it's clearly somewhere in the middle, but it's you want enough quality to keep them happy, but also you want to deliver fast enough to deliver what they want. So it's how we explore that thing. I've played it a couple of times. It needs a bit of
Yeah.
work, I think, but it's it's getting
All
there.
right. Yeah, this is fun. I've played a handful of these games before. Of course, we talked before, and you showed me some of them, and they're fun. Um,
Yeah.
I would love to collaborate with you at some point on a Devops game. I don't know what it's going to look
Yeah.
like yet, but I
That's
think
it.
it would be fun to
Yeah, that's
I don't know. I guess there is a Phoenix Project game that I haven't played yet. You have to hire a trained game facilitator to come do it with your team. So it's not something
Oh, okay.
you can't just buy
Right,
it
yeah,
off the
yeah.
shelf or play it online.
Right, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but maybe someday I'll play that game.
Yeah, I suppose it's a DevOps game. You could kind of explore the difference between having a separate ops team and bring a team that does the deliveries and so on, and see the difference and bring that into the team. Maybe that could.
Yeah, there's so many different
Yeah,
areas of DevOps that could be explored, and that's a great one.
yeah,
Should
yeah.
you have your ops people on your dev team, or should you have separate teams?
Mm,
Um,
mm,
one of
exactly.
the things I really would like to focus on is batch size. I mean, and your
Yeah,
corn game already helps with
yeah,
that. But
yeah,
the idea of adding an element of risk to each iteration. Sometimes an iteration or release fails. It doesn't get deployed, or you decide to
yeah,
revert it because
yeah,
customer needs have changed or whatever.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
adding some
yeah,
element of some of your batches
yeah,
are discarded.
yeah,
And that means you
yeah,
need smaller batches too, so that you don't, if you wait till you have 15 things ready and you have to discard them all, you
yeah.
lose a lot more than if you just lose one. So something
Exactly.
like that
Yeah,
would be a fun sort of game to explore for
yeah,
me.
absolutely.
So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very real world experience. That a previous company, I probably shouldn't name them, but they were doing Scrum and sprints, delivering every 2 weeks. Quite happy with it, which is great. And then I pointed out that they were actually failed 60% of those deliveries. 60% of those
oh,
deliveries. They all went, oh, that's bad. And so they stopped developing new features and spent 3 months building a CI/CD pipeline.
hmm
And by the time I left, they were delivering twice a day, and the product owners were going, "This is great! I can find out what the customer wants twice a day rather than once every 4 weeks.
yes,
It's game changing.
yeah,
So, yeah,
exactly,
it'd be great to build some kind of game around
yeah,
that.
that would be fun.
Yeah.
I just like the idea of introducing these games and the idea of doing games as a way to make a point. So if you're listening and you're struggling with convincing your team that smaller batches make sense, or that no estimates make sense, or many other things,
Yeah.
maybe you can use one of these games. Maybe I don't know if you want to talk about this. How could you go about creating your own game? I don't know if that's something you're prepared to discuss.
Um, Yeah, it's a tricky one, really. I mean, I think the thing of the platform that I'm using is it's based around Vue.js and Node and Mongo. So it's actually very quick to knock up new games. So if anybody's got any ideas, happy to collaborate with them on those. I've built a couple. Started working on it with a couple of people on some of those things. So um, I think the game design is tricky. I think the thing to do is to distill out what it is you're trying to, what concept it is you're trying to get across, and strip everything else away from that.
Hmm
So a lot of these games get too complicated. I've seen people use the coin game, the physical one. They add various bits in, and it's like, but it dilutes the point. The key to it is you just have have one point you want to make very strongly, and just make it very strongly,
hmm
and that's it. Because the game's short. You don't need to make it complicated, make it very simple. There's the Get Kanban game that lasts a couple of years. I think you can play it properly. And it seems so very good, I'm sure. But it's it's trying to do all things. I think the best games are ones that just say, here's one point, and we're just going to ram it home.
Yeah.
So you can't possibly misunderstand the point we're trying to get across. Just that one point, and then go for it.
Is there any risk in, or have you received feedback or pushback from people who say, yes, I see the point of your game, but I don't think it's valid, or it's too simple. It's not realistic because it's too simple. Have you ever gotten criticism like this? And if so, how do you address that?
Um, Yeah, so sometimes people say that. I think, particularly like the no estimates game, because it's based around that perfect data. People are always saying, well, it's particularly when you get to discuss like the Monte Carlo simulations and how you can forecast, and it's very much like, well, um, what about this? What about if this happens? What about if the team changes size? What about if our tasks aren't all the same size? And the great thing about the Monte Carlo is all of those kind of variations are taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what variations are in your data; they're taken care of because you're doing simulation rather than estimating. So people do sometimes go a bit too simplistic, but I think if they get the underlying concept, they take that away and they can dilute it for their team. The coin game particularly, because it's like you should deliver the highest value items first, and you always get kickback on that. People say, well, the thing is, we work in banking, and it's all kind of
everybody's business is a unique snowflake, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah. But they always say, they say, well, what's the point of delivering the highest value items first? If we've got to deliver everything anyway, legally, to legal reasons. And I said, well, because I had this very much at Clearbank, and we were doing exactly that kind of thing, and it's like, well, you're actually better off when it gets to the deadline, instead of saying to the regulators, well, we haven't delivered anything. If you say, well, we've delivered 90%, they go, oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
And that 10% that you haven't delivered is the lowest risk item, the lowest value items, things that people don't use so much. So you're still covering yourself. Even if you get fined for that bit you haven't done, it's going to be smaller than if you haven't. If you've left a really big thing off the backlog, it just worked through alphabetically or something. It's. I'd say that's the biggest kickback I usually get is that if it's why do highest value items first if it's just all legislative.
Right. Yeah. All right. So if anybody's interested in collaborating with you, they have a great idea for a game, how can they get in touch with you?
Just go to the website, and there's contact me straight from the website. It's the easiest thing. There's actually a page on the website called Labs, which you can go to, which has got like stuff I'm working on, and you can enter your own there if you want.
Okay.
So just go in touch. But we'll have a discussion. I'm on LinkedIn. Steve Wells on LinkedIn.
And give the website address one more time.
Yes, Agilesimulations.co.uk.
All right. Well, great. Is there anything you'd like to add, Steve, before we sign off?
Probably just the other thing, just maybe based on the assessment thing that I'm doing. So that's quite new. So I think everywhere I've worked, we've always done the Spotify health check, and it's great. It's really, really great thing, and it's really kind of engaging. But it's always a complete nightmare because you have to have a spreadsheet of all the results. It's a real pain. So what the assessment thing does, it basically stores all that stuff in a database. So you can look at like one team over time. You can look at individuals in the team. You can look at it across the organisation. You can look at compare teams with each other. So all of that data is already in there. It just takes away all that hassle of the spreadsheet. That's the worst part. So,
okay.
So if anybody wants to use that or any other kind of assessment like an agile maturity or find dysfunctions, that's all in there. But I think the key to that is it's not particularly clever like the games, I don't think, but it does save you a lot of time.
Nice.
So.
Now, is there a subscription fee for people who want to use these games or simulations?
Yeah, it's quite low. I think it's about $5.99 a month for like the games, and the assessments I think it's about $11.99. So
that's in pounds, right? So if you're in the US or Europe or somewhere else, just do a currency conversion. But
yeah, in pounds. So it's very kind of I do. It's very low. It just pays my server really.
Yeah, quite accessible. Yeah, great. Well, I love the topic. It's been fun talking with you, Steve. Thanks for coming on, and let's be in touch and do a DevOps collaboration at some point.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody, and hope to see you next time.
Cheers. Bye.